Oh, we're live now. Thank you. All right, we're here to be on this. Good morning, everybody. This is your host, Talking Sports for Big C. Host Big C, Colin MacGuire. We'll be on until 8 to 9 o'clock this morning. Today is the Thursday edition of Talking Bama with Big C, and to be on the show, all you got to do is call 334-799-4922, 334-799-4922. Also, we have a YouTube channel called uh, go to our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and go look up uh, JockJive Radio Sports. Go there and go. You can go there live right now, and it's free. Just subscribe to it. It doesn't cost a dime at all. Just go in there and you can watch us that way, or you can watch us on Facebook Live, Talking Bama with Big C. Like us, let everybody know about us. But anyway, what we're going to do, right, as we always do on Thursday, is Talking Bama with Big C. What we're going to do first, we're going to talk about the basketball game last night, with Alabama beating Auburn, who was ranked number 8, 79-75. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Good. Rainy morning. That's right. It's that way down this way, too. Lori, I hope you're doing well. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Thank y'all for being on here. Alabama won by the score of 79-75 in Tuscaloosa last night. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
How you doing, Big C?
Good. You doing all right this morning?
Yep, that was a big win for Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa last night over the Auburn Tigers.
Sure was. Big
I
time win.
picked Alabama. I picked Alabama win by 7, 82-75, but I was close. It was 79-75. I was close on the score.
Yeah, you was. Sears played a great game last night for Alabama. So did some other people.
Tonight you got second of game contact the LSU women tonight, women's basketball tonight.
All right, we're what time of night? What time is that on ESPN? And what time is it coming on?
I think it's on ESPN at either 7 o'clock our time or 8 o'clock our time. I forgot which one.
Okay. All right.
It's on ESPN. It's on ESPN tonight though.
Yeah, there'll be a big crowd down there. Sure will be.
Alabama women's got Kentucky this weekend in Tuscaloosa in women's basketball.
They're better than Kentucky. I think Kentucky's pretty bad. You there?
They play at 8 o'clock on ESPN tonight.
Okay. So 7
No,
o'clock.
maybe 7 o'clock our time. Maybe 7 o'clock our time.
I think 6 o'clock they got a game day type crowd group there. Be talking
Maybe 7 o'clock
about.
tip off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had a good interview yesterday with Marty Lyons. I enjoyed that.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun talking to him. It was.
Yeah, I know Rocky. That's his son.
Yeah, the doctor. Yeah.
Oh, Marty. Yeah, he's 67.
Yeah, he just turned 67 a week ago.
Yeah, I guess he's still working for the Jets.
Well, he does the radio broadcast for him. He's the color analyst for him on the radio. Yeah, he does.
I got a book from Marty Lyons that put two Brian for Marty Lyons.
Well, that's good. Well, what else is going on sports wise, big man?
I think today's Andre Smith's birthday. He played for Alabama.
Well, I remember him. He was a good player, great player. Well, big man, I want to thank you for calling. Appreciate it. You have a great day and roll tide to you.
You get on the road. Go Bama football.
Yep, that's right. See you. Bye-bye.
What?
All right. Okay, where were we? Okay. All right. Yeah, good morning to you, John Dent. Good morning to you, Greg Anderson, Roll Tide Roll. Thank you, Miss Lori. I like the roll. Hoops Tide. I like that. And hello to you, John Dent. So glad all you good folks are on this morning. And, yeah, it's raining up there in Idaho, and it's raining down here. It's supposed to rain all day today, all week. That's not going to be a fun week. Going to be wet. You got to stay dry. But anyway, as I mentioned, Alabama won 79-75 over number 8 Alabama. over number 8 Auburn. Excuse me. Yeah, be right back wild to be beating your own, playing each other and winning. But anyway, that's like the A-Day game. Alabama won. But anyway, field goals. Alabama was 26 out of 68 for 38.2%, while Auburn was 28 out of 67 for 41.8%. 3 points. Alabama was hitting it pretty good, 11 out of 30 for 36.7%, while Auburn was 5 out of 25 for 20%. That's how they killed Ole Miss the last Saturday. Free throws, Alabama was 16 out of 19 for 84.2%, while Auburn was 18 out of 14 for 77.8%. Rebounds, Alabama had 47, Auburn had 40. Offensive rebounds, Alabama had 16, they had 11. Defensive rebounds, this probably made a difference in the game. 31 to their, is that 29? Yeah, that's right. That was close. 47 to 40. Assist, Alabama had 13. They had 11. Uh, yeah, I'm here. I'm here. 6 steals for Alabama, 10 for Auburn. Blocks, 3 for Alabama, 10 for Auburn. Turnovers, 14 to 11. Points off the turnovers, 18 for Alabama. 15, for Auburn. Fast break points, Alabama had 11. They had 8 points in the paint. Alabama had 30. They had 38. Fouls, 19 for Alabama, 20 for them. Technicals, 1 for Alabama, none for them. No flagrant fouls on either team. Oh, yeah, I can see you, big man. Largest lead, Alabama had 14, which was at the half, to 8 for Auburn at the beginning of the game. Remember that. I was watching the game, and at times I was dozing off during the first half, but excuse me, I got up. I was able to wake up from my little nap or whatever. But anyway, got to watch the rest of that. Alabama led 44 to 30 at the half, and then Auburn outscored them 45 to 35 for Alabama to win 79 to 75. Yeah, they're gonna have to get bigger. They're gonna have to get some meat on some people inside for them. Good morning, 62 and rainy. 65 and real cloudy here, and it's raining or has been raining. I heard it rain last night. Last night, the lights blinked off and on a couple of times. But we were able to get on there after 10 o'clock and finally was able to stay on for a little while despite the Wi-Fi not working too well. It was in the red last night. And this morning when I woke up, I noticed that the TV was working again. It blinked off. But anyway, so we're good to go. I'm glad we are. I was a little worried about that. But anyway, excuse me. Sears led Alabama with 22 points, along with Nelson and Wrightsell, 14 each. Pringle had 2. Estrada had 0. Good morning to you, Jimmy McCurley. How you doing, big man? Thank you for watching. Thank you, Lewis up there in Big V, Greg down in Dothan, John up in Morris, Miss Lori out in Idaho, Brian. Appreciate all y'all watching. Off the bench, a guy named Griffin had 17. Stevenson had 6. And I hope I pronounce this guy's name right. Wage, W-A-G-E, had 4. For Auburn, Broom had 25. Moore had 3. Wilkins had 7. Jones had 9. Holloway had 2. Cardwell had 2. Donaldson had 8. Baker Mays had 11, and Johnson had 8. So, yeah, it's about 10 after. So that's what happened last night. Now Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee, I think, are tied for the lead for the SEC. Now I'm don't know. We'll do the standings tomorrow going into Saturday's games, and we'll go from there. But anyway, that's what happened in the present. Let's go back to the past, and what I didn't know what to talk about, so I started thinking something, and then I said, my mind, why not talk about 10 win seasons? And believe it or not, the first one was in the 1920s, and it wasn't the year they went 10-0 and beat Washington in the Rose Bowl. It was the second one. The first 10-win season was in 1920. Went 10-1. I don't know how they ended up playing 11 games. Did not play in a bowl game. 6-1 in the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Association, which ended up breaking off, forming the Southern Conference, and then after that it formed in 1933, formed the SEC. So I think you had about 24 teams in the conference, in that conference at the time. Yeah, this was the first 10-win season in Alabama football history. Zen Scott was the coach. It was his second season as the head coach. Had home, yeah, they were members of the SIAA. Lost one conference game. It was number 4 in the conference. There was 3 teams. We'll mention that in a minute. But the home fields were Denny Field, which is not. Denny Field was not located where the stadium is now. It was located somewhere else, and they used to call it University Field, and then they changed it to Denny Field. Rickwood Field was a home stadium field for Alabama back in the day. Starting with Scott, every Alabama football coach except J.B. Whitworth had one season to win in 10 games. That's pretty amazing. Coach had won 10 games. Like Georgia, Tulane, and Georgia Tech were all undefeated. And they based championships on percentage because Georgia went 7-0, Tulane 5-0, and Georgia Tech 4-0. They were tied for the championship. It was talking about the SIAA. Mine is snoozing on the couch. I like that. They had 3 teams that were tied for the championship. They were tri-champions, not co-champions, as they said on there. Yeah, 26 teams. It look like they're trying to get back to that, the way how the talk is going, which is ridiculous. All right. The first homecoming game was versus LSU. That's when they started homecoming. But anyway, they went 10-1 that year. They opened up with Southern Military Academy. I don't know where that would be. I don't know if that could have been in Greensboro or not. But anyway, they played them at what they called University Field I looked up went to Wikipedia to look up the scores of the games. Beat them by the score of 59-0. Played Marion next. Won that one 49-0. Southern Birmingham Southern played them and beat them 45-0. Then Mississippi College beat them. They were on Denny. It was called University Field. Then they changed the name to Denny Field. And I'll try to explain to you where I heard where it's located at, where that was. It's not there no more. Okay, Mississippi College, they beat them by the score of 57-0. Played Howard next, won that one 33-0. Then their first game they played at Rickwood Field that year was against Swanee, beating them by the score 21-0. Vandy played them at Rickwood Field and beat them by the score 14-7. Then, like I mentioned, they played LSU for homecoming and they won that one 21-0. Georgia, they lost to them in Atlanta at Ponce de Leon Park by the score of 21-14. Mississippi A&M, which is now Mississippi State, beat them by the score of 24-7 in Birmingham at Rickwood Field. And then they played Case College, which is now Case Western Reserve, and beat them by the score of 40-0. So what we're going to do is we're going to give y'all a little information on Zen Scott, who was the coach at the time. And, he's the first coach to win 10 games. He had a real good record. He was born on July the 6th, 1882, and died on April 21st, 1924. He wasn't very old, about 41. Yeah, he was 41 years old. He didn't even make it to 42. He had cancer. We'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, he was the head coach at Alabama from 1919 to 2022. At Western Reserve, 1910, 1911 through 13. He was at Case. 1918, which was during the war, he coached at Cleveland Naval Reserve. And then from 1919 to 1922, he was at Alabama. He was born in, he was born in Pasadena, California, but moved to Cleveland when he was 4. At one point, he was a horse racing rider. He was a sports rider. Then ended up coaching football. He was the one that recruited Joe Sewell, the baseball player. He played football and baseball. Joe Sewell did, and as you know, he was a Hall of Famer. If I'm not mistaken, right, I think one year he had only 4 strikeouts, which I think that will never be broken. I don't know how many games, but that's still a pretty amazing record there. And that last year he was there in 1922, talking about Zen Scott. They beat Penn 9-7. That was considered a major upset at the time, and it heralded Alabama as a national power. And Scott didn't get to enjoy his success as a case of cancer of the mouth and the tongue forced him to resign. After the 1922 season, he died in Cleveland at the age of 41. His record at Alabama was 29-9-3. His overall record was 49 wins, 26 losses, and 3 ties. His record before coming to Alabama was 20 wins, 17 losses, and a tie. So he did pretty well. Now, that last year, I read something somewhere where he knew that he had cancer, but he kept on coaching it. Unfortunately, it got the best of him. And what happened was they went ahead and hired a new coach, and it was Wallace Wade. Now, he's the next guy that had next coach that had a 10-win season, and they had 2 of them in the 20s. They had 10 of them in the 30s also. Good morning, big man. DeBoer's getting his feet under him on his new job, and I think we hired the right man. Roll Tide always. Yeah, I think they did. Got Ryan Williams to recommit to Alabama. Canceled his Texas visit. I don't know if he's going to still go over to Auburn or not, but he's committed to Alabama, and he's going to sign on February the 9th, which is his 17th birthday. And, things are starting to look back up after all this news. And also, by the way, Jim Harbaugh, or somebody else I know calls him Hairball, is going to the Los Angeles Chargers. So Michigan will, I don't know who they're going to, they're talking about hiring the offensive coordinator. There's also been talk about Brian Kelly, the LSU coach, going up that way. I don't know if he is or not. We'll wait and see how that all transpires. But anyway, so that's what's happening there. Hey, Tammy, how you doing? Good morning to you. Tell Charlie I said hello. Anyway, Alabama hired Wallace Wade in 1923. Went 7-2-1 his first year. Then 8-1 in 1924, and then in 1925 went 10-0, 9-0 regular season. Invited to the Rose Bowl and won out there against Washington, and then that really will tell you something else about that. But now they're in the Southern Conference. They broke off from the SIAA. I still think they had a bunch of teams left over in that league. But anyway, they were 10-0 overall, 7-0 Southern Conference co-champions with Tulane. And what it is, they do this on percentage. I don't think they played as many conference games as Alabama did. But anyway, it was the first bowl team. This was Wallace Wade's third year. It was between Alabama and Kentucky. When he went to the interview at Kentucky, they had him sitting there until 10 o'clock that night, and he just said, I'm pretty sure he said a lot more saltier words. But anyway, he just said, I'm gone. And he went to Alabama and got hired, and the rest is history. Bruce Jones was the captain, and they ran the single wing offense. Denny Field was still the home field for Alabama. Denny Stadium was built in 1929. Rickwood Field was still the home field in Birmingham. And Crampton Bowl, they played in Montgomery. And, all right, this is a quote out of Wikipedia. The most important win in Southern football history, the game that changed the South forever. And also they had a guy named Johnny Mac Brown that played running back from Dothan, Greg, who ended up being a Cowboy star. So this is what we're going to do here. We're going to go ahead and give you scores. And in the 9-game season, they only gave up a touchdown, and it was against Birmingham Southern. Everybody else got shut out. Played Union College, which is out of Tennessee. Spring of 1936, Coach Bryant ran their spring practice for them. But anyway, played at Denny Field in Tuscaloosa, winning by the score of 53-0. Second game was on October the 2nd, and they beat Birmingham Southern. They played them on a Friday by the score of 50-7. Then LSU on October the 10th played them at Baton Rouge and Tiger Stadium and beat them by the score of 42-0. On October the 17th, played Swanee in Birmingham at Rickwood Field, beating them by the score of 27-0. Then on October the 24th, traveled over to Atlanta and played at Grant Field. That place is old as all get out, too. Beat them by the score of 7-0. Then, let's see. Then on October the 31st, I think that's pretty ironic because this is 25. 45 years later, yours truly was at Bryant-Denny. It was then known as Denny Stadium. They were playing Mississippi State. Mississippi State originally was known as Mississippi A&M, like Texas A&M. And Alabama beat them by the score of 6-0. Now, 45 years later, when yours truly was in Tuscaloosa watching them play, It was 35-6. Right. November the 7th, played Kentucky at Rickwood Field, beating them by the score of 45-0. Then played Florida on November the 14th down in Gainesville, beating them by the score of they beat them by the score of 34-0. And then I was getting them mixed up with another score in a different year. Then they beat Georgia in Birmingham at Rickwood Field on November the 26th, which was Thanksgiving Day. They played a lot of Thanksgiving Day games back then. It was Georgia or Vanderbilt, it seemed like. And it always seemed like it was in Birmingham. But they played them at Rickwood Field and beat them by the score of 27-0. And then they made the long trip out to California, January the 1st, 1926. And this is when Southern football made its grand debut. Whatever. They went, and what was wild, they were behind 12-0 at the half. Third quarter, they knocked somebody out that was really good for them, and they scored 20 points on them to go up 20-12, and then they scored a touchdown, but they couldn't go for two. They kicked the extra point to make it 20-19, and it stood. So they had a big, big parade for them. And you know the thing that's pretty interesting, I tell you one thing I think of every time when we go to Tuscaloosa, we go through on Greensboro Avenue, and we go over these railroad tracks, and to your right is the railroad station, which is where they came into from California. I don't know where the tracks turn, but somehow or another, I think part of it goes to New Orleans and another part of it goes toward Meridian, but went out that way. Think about it, riding on a train for 4 or 5 days versus the travel they have today of getting in an airplane and being there in about 5 hours versus 5 days. And even practice out on the way out there. Brian's already been here. He already called us. You'd like to be on the show today, all you got to do is call 334-799-4922. We'd be glad to talk to you. But anyway, so that was the first national championship team Alabama had in Tuscaloosa. All right, the next year is the 1930s, and I don't know what was it, Wallace Wade, this was his 8th season, but going into the on April the 30th, Wade announced his resignation effective end of the 1930 season. Now, for whatever reason, that did not affect him, but normally it's not a good idea to announce that you're leaving, especially nowadays. I don't know, it didn't bother him back then. But anyway, they gave up only 13 points the whole year. Wallace Wade went to Duke after that. Did real well up there, but not as well as he did at Alabama. But anyway, he was Southern co-champions with Tulane again at 8-0. And now their home field is Denny Stadium, where it is now. It was built in 1929. Legion Field in Birmingham's now in existence. It was built in 1927. Crampton Bowl is still there. It's over, I don't know how, I think it's over 100 years old. I'm not positive on that. But that's in Montgomery. And my daddy, by the way, played, they played at Crampton Bowl when he was at Lanier, and then they played Woodlawn at Legion Field. You know what's interesting if you think about this? It's no telling how many people have played on the surface at like Bryant-Denny Stadium, Crampton Bowl, Legion Field. Now you can say Bart Starr, who graduated from Lanier High School in 1952, he played at Crampton Bowl, he played at Legion Field, he played at Denny at the time was known as Denny Stadium. He also played at uh, Ladd Stadium down in Mobile, which ended up being a home stadium for Alabama later on. Yeah, at one time, Alabama had 4 different stadiums as a home field. Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Montgomery, and Mobile. That's pretty wild. That's a good way to promote your program, too. But anyway, they gave up, this team, 1930 team, only gave up 13 points the whole year, and that was during the regular season. Against Tennessee and Vanderbilt, everybody else had 8 shutouts. That ought to be a record for a season there. Yeah, because it might be a tie for that because, 25 and 30 had 8. Both teams had 8 shutouts. That's pretty good. Sort of hard to lose when you don't give up any points. But anyway, that year, Wallace Wade started the second team in the first quarter, and then they brought in the starters in the second quarter, and they did that against Washington State, and the score at the end of the first quarter was still 0-0, and then after that, Alabama scored 21 points in the second quarter to go up 21-0, and then kicked a field goal in the second half to coast to a 24-0 win. But anyway, you had Johnny Kane, who was College Football Hall of Fame. Fred Sankton, everybody knows Mr. Fred, knew Mr. Fred. They called him Mr. Birmingham. He was big-time civic leader up in Birmingham. He owned Sankton Sporting Goods stores. Had several up in Birmingham, one in Huntsville, and one in Gadsden. Now, his son, I knew his son, Fred Jr. He was a great guy. I really liked him. He's unfortunately no longer here with us. But he was he worked he was a lawyer, and then he ended up working for the city of Gadsden, like the airport authority. He was in charge of that. Even though he didn't practice law, he kept his law license. He did the, whatever it is, continuing education to keep it up. He did that. But anyway, on September the 27th, 1930, Alabama opened up the season against Howard at Denny Stadium and winning by the score of 43-0. A week later, took on Ole Miss and won 64-0 on October the 4th. What's funny, 39 years later, golly, you know what? This is wild. I didn't even think about this. Alabama and Ole Miss played each other and that was the Archie Manning game, which was on national TV, the second primetime game ever, college football game in prime time in the regular season. And that score ended up being 33-32. So if you combine the points, 39 years later, it was 65-64, but Alabama had 64 in 1930. Then on October the 11th, took on Swanee. Now, that game was played in Tuscaloosa in 1930, talking about Alabama and Ole Miss. Then a week later, on October the 11th, took on Swanee at Legion Field and winning 25-0. Then on October 18th, third Saturday of October, took on the Tennessee Vols and beat them by the score of 18-6 in T-Town. Bobby Dodd, the great coach at Georgia Tech, was the quarterback for Tennessee. He's one of maybe 3 or 4 people, I know 3 people for sure, that are in the College Football Hall of Fame as both as a coach and as a player. Him, Steve Spurrier, and Bowden White. All three of them had a connection to the state of Tennessee. Two of them played football at Tennessee, and Spurrier was from Tennessee, but he played at Florida. So that's pretty amazing. That's a heck of an accomplishment getting it both ways as a coach and as a player. But then, they beat them 18-6. That was the first points they gave up for the year. Then the next week took on Vandy and Birmingham at Legion Field on October 25th and beat them by the score of 12-7. And then on November the 1st took on Kentucky and Lexington, winning by the score of 19-0. This was the score I was thinking about in 1925. It was 1930. They played Florida down in Gainesville and beat them by the score of 20-0. Then the only game they played at Crampton Bowl was on October the 15th against LSU and beat them by the score of 33-0 in Montgomery. Then on Thanksgiving Day, November the 27th, took on Georgia at Legion Field in Birmingham and beat them by the score of 13-0. And then they took on Washington State, the Cougars of Washington State, and beat them by the score of 24-0. Like I mentioned earlier, started the second team first, warmed down, and then they scored 21 points. And like I mentioned, there's another person I failed to mention. Let me go ahead and mention this again. You had two guys that were in the College Football Hall of Fame, Johnny Keane and Fred Sankton. Frank Howard, if he's in the College Football Hall of Fame, he's in it for being the coach at Clemson. Legendary Clemson coach, but he was from, He was from Barlow Bend, Alabama, and he went to Barton Academy in Mobile, played guard on the 30 team. And what was it? I don't know. I didn't get to meet, I regret that I didn't get, I spoke to him, but I didn't introduce myself to him. I should have. But, and then J.B. Jennings B. Whitworth, who kicked the field goal against Washington State, ended up being the head coach at Alabama later on, and he's the only one since Zen Scott not to win 10 games at least one time during a season. So, anyway, they took on Washington State, beat them by the score 24-0. And there was a fellow by the name of Frank Thomas who Alabama had hired as the head coach. And he made the trip out to Pasadena to watch his future team. And the first year he was there, they went 9-1. Lost to Tennessee, but beat everybody else. So that could have been a 10-game win season for them. But it did not turn out that way, unfortunately, for them. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 1934 34 team. Frank Thomas, probably already know this, but we'll go ahead and mention it. Played at a place called Western Tech or something like that in Michigan, then transferred to Notre Dame and played for the legendary Knute Rockne, and he was the roommate of and best friend of George the Gipper. And anyway, we're looking up something. Okay. So, anyway, he kept it going pretty good. They went, 9-1 his first season there. 8-2 in 1932. In 1933, went 7-1-1 and won the SEC. And then they won it again in 1934. And according to this here, I'm looking at Wikipedia, that they were the SEC co-champion that year. This was their second year as a member of the SEC, separated uh, uh, from the Southern Conference. And of course, their home games were played in Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, and uh, also Montgomery. And they beat in a second consecutive season was the champions of the SEC. Uh, Anyway, 5 selectors selected this team as recognized as major by the NCAA. Behrman, Dunkel, Holgate, Poland, and Williamson, all math systems, recognized Alabama's national champions. Sports writer Morgan Blake called it the best team he ever saw. And you had, let me see, they were in the Notre Dame box, I believe. Yeah, they don't even have the name of offense on here, but that's what they, which to me is similar to the single wing. I don't know, there is a difference. I think they do a lot of shifting in that in the single wing. Now, if you ever watched the movie uh, Knute Rockne All American, speaking of, I mentioned Coach Thomas was best friends and roommate with George the Gipper. In the movie, Ronald Reagan played him, and then in the movie he died. I don't know what happened. He had something, which today, if that happened to you, you'd probably survive. But that was a good thing about living today. In a lot of ways, you can survive stuff that even couldn't survive back in the day. But anyway, Morgan Blake, sports writer, called it the best football team he ever saw. It had they also threw the ball along with running it. He had Don Hudson at one end, Coach Bryant at the he called himself the other end. Don Hudson was a charter member of both the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's a native of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I don't know how many Hall of Fames this man's in. He's like those two Hall of Fames. He was in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, Arkansas Hall of Fame. I think there's a Wisconsin Sports Hall of Fame. He's in that one too. So let's see. College, Pro, Alabama, Arkansas, Green Bay. He's in at least 6, if not 7, different Hall of Fames. It's amazing. And Coach Bryant played against him in high school. He was from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Coach Bryant was from Fordyce. And the Red Bugs of Fordyce beat them twice, 7-0, and then I don't know, they beat them pretty bad the next year, like 50-12 or whatever. But anyway, Donald Montgomery Hudson, and he even made I think when they had the 100th anniversary of the NFL, he made that team too. So he was the Jerry Rice of that era. That's a good comparison there. Dixie Howell was a great football player. He played baseball and football. Now, a guy named Bill Lee, who was from Utah, Alabama, was the team captain. Now, he ended up playing pro football. Now, Dixie Howard, his real name is Millard Howard. He was from Samson, Alabama, where he played at Geneva County High School. He's a legend down that way. I think they still talk about him today, even though and he died in 1971. Now, if you're familiar with the Most Valuable Player Award for the A-Day game, that's named after him. And Coach Bryant did that. He died in 1971. before A-Day game, and then they did I remember them, and I remember Bill Lee being on at midfield after the game talking about him. So it was, so, see, but he mainly played pro baseball, but he was a good great football college player. He was the MVP of the Rose Bowl, but playing Stanford and beat them by the score 29-13. But yeah, okay. They opened up with Howard on September the 29th, beating them at Bryant-Denny Stadium by the score of 24-0. Listen to this attendance figure. That day they had 6,000 fans showing up. Anyway, Swanee was played on October the 6th in Montgomery at Crampton Bowl, and Alabama won that one by the score of 35-6. Then they played Mississippi State on October 13th at Denny Stadium and winning that one by the score of 41-0. Now, when they played Tennessee in Legion Field on October the 20th, interesting thing here. I ate food last night. Beat Tennessee by the score of 13-6. 18,000 crammed into Legion Field that day. I tell you what's interesting. They played. When is that going to be? Because LSU, I know, playing South Carolina tonight on ESPN. Is that what did you get that confused, Brian? But anyway, next week took on Georgia on October the 27th and won that one 26-6 at Legion Field in Birmingham. Then on November the 3rd, went up to Kentucky to play at their stadium there and won that one by the score of 34-14. All right, then they played Clemson. They didn't draw a big crowd there. That was homecoming. Only 8,000 showed up for that, and beat them by the score of 40-0. Then on November the 17th, took on Georgia Tech over in Atlanta at Grant Field and beat them by the score of 40-0. There was 14,000 folks there. Now, the last game of the season, which was on Thanksgiving Day. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story about this one. And thankfully, my sister gave me a book. Okay. Where are we going with this? Oh, November 29th. Played Vanderbilt. Had 24,000 folks. Even drew more than the Tennessee game at Legion Field and won that one 34-0. It was Thanksgiving Day. That might have been because it being Thanksgiving Day. Eat the turkey and then come home, go to the game, whatever. But anyway, what the deal was, my sister gave me a book called 20 Grand, written by the late great Benny Marshall, the sports editor of the Birmingham News back in the 50s and 60s. Anyway, they were talking about that 34 team that went to the Rose Bowl. And they got a telegram before the game. A guy named Al Masters. He was sort of like, I don't know, he was he wasn't the athletic director, but he was an administrator out at Stanford. And it read, if y'all win today, you'll be invited to the Rose Bowl. And I think Coach Bryant said in his book when they read that telegram, the Coach Thomas did that. It fired him up. He said he had cold chills going up in his spine. And they said that during the game when it got really out of hand, what is now known as the $1 Million Band played California, Here We Come. And so they ended up coming out there and winning 29-13 against them and Dixie Howell and Don Hudson put on a show that day. Howell was voted most valuable player, but Hudson should have, I don't know. Either way, both of them were great players, and they were on that day. So they ended up going 10-0, winning the national championship at that time, and or declared national champions. And let's see where is it? Oh yeah, the Behrman, Dunkel, Holgate, Poland, and all. Yeah, we already read that off. But anyway, that was what they did. Now next week we'll try to talk about a few more 10-win seasons at Alabama. But see, I wrote this down somewhere. I thought I wrote it down on this notebook, but I guess I didn't. But I think that's really an amazing record to win 10 or more games a year. And I think Alabama's got 40-something. I don't have the abacus out. I do say this. I can tell you this. In 19. He's not gonna dock today. He'll dock tomorrow. He'll be coming in tomorrow, big man. Oh yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about when he calls in tomorrow. Oh yeah. Anyway, what I'm getting at is, okay, you had Wallace Wade had 10-win seasons. Frank Thomas had 2 10-win seasons. Red Drew had one in 1952. And then the next coach, Whitworth, he went 4, 24, and 2. All right, then after that, you had Coach Bright, in the 60s. He did it in 61, 62, 64, 66. So he had 4 there. And I can't add up all of a sudden. I think that's 8 there. And then in the 80s, you had 10-win seasons. You had, I think, 8 of them. Let's do that. 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 77, 78, 79. Yeah, 8 seasons. Unbelievable. The first, and 8 out of those 9, they were running the wishbone offense. So, needless to say, it was an effective offense. It helped you win. And that's what you want to do, is do that, is win. But anyway, Coach Bryant had one in 1980. And then I think the next one, let's see, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, and 89. So you only had 2 in that decade of the 80s, when you had 8 in the 70s, and you had 4 in the, or was that 5? Let me see. 61, 62, 64, 68. 66. I think that's right, 4. But anyway, so you had 8, then you had 2 that decade. Then in the 90s, 11, 91, 92, 94, and 96. So you had, and then 99. See you tomorrow. Yeah, we'll try to stay dry, Greg. I hope you're doing well. Stay dry, big man. But let's see. That was 5 in that decade. Now, the 2000s wasn't too good, or the beginning of it. Let's see, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2000. You only had 3 in that decade. And then, let's see, all right, you won 10 in 2010, 11, 12, 13. The whole decade you had 10 or more wins. And then this decade, you had 10 or more wins. 20, 22, 20, 20, 21, 22, 23. So you had 4. So, I mean, I can't do all that adding. I had it written down and the numbers up. So every coach has been at Alabama after Zen Scott, except for Whitworth, who did not have a good record at all, was had at least one 10-win season. Had some that had more. See, that was Fran that had one in 2002. And then after that, Shula had one in 2005. So I think that's what, if my math is right, it's 4 of them. Then you had 2008 and 2009. And from that point on, from 2008 on, 10 or more wins. Alabama is that's pretty good. So we'll just wait and see what happens this year. I think in my opinion, it's going to be a lot better than some people are talking about. So we'll just have to wait and see what all happens there. But anyway, we're almost out of time. But anyway, yeah, so we'll talk some more about that later on, and then I'll have the numbers down next week. But anyway, appreciate y'all watching here and being on here. Yeah, you stay dry, Greg. But anyway, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and call it a day today. We sort of, no pun intended, we have a short day on on Thursdays here. But we will be back full bore tomorrow, talking sports with Big C, all kind of stuff going on. We'll talk about that. But anyway, y'all have a great day, and we'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Bye-bye.